Sometimes as an artist, a writer, a filmmaker, and probably more, it can feel like the stories you want to tell just aren't coming. And it's like every step takes you nowhere. That ideas are passing you by. All while you have a burning desire to actually make something. It can be incredibly frustrating and feel isolating. And it feels like it's a mix of being lost in the dark and like you're treading the same path again, again. So, get away, you tell yourself. But as much as I love escaping from society, locking myself away, or even running to nature, sometimes that just isn't the escape that you actually need. And it's not that you need to escape from yourself so much, or that getting away to a secluded place isn't great, but more that sometimes the best place to dive in and be inspired is in a sea of people. So I've spoken before about the importance of an artist, a communicator, a marketer, a creator, whatever you call yourself, whatever you label yourself as, sort of getting away and getting time to yourself. I think there's another incredibly important aspect of being a creative who communicates things or creates media, which is somehow going out there to think about, being connected with humanity. Now, I'm not talking in necessarily a social sense, in the sense of getting out there and hanging out with people, though I think that is important and possibly an area that I lack a little bit. But there's something to be said about just immersing yourself in humanity. And look, it sounds pretty wanky the way I'm phrasing it, but essentially what I'm talking about is just getting out there, being amongst people and sort of people watching. So when I say people watching, I'm not talking about getting creepy. I definitely don't want to do that, look stalky or like a stalker or like someone who's odd and just staring at people. But I think there was a time in my life when I had a lot more spare time, where I would perhaps sit in cafes and just stare at the world moving by. I'd sit on the balconies of my houses when I had balconies I could look out on and just watch life pass me by. And that's something I've noticed I haven't had in my life as much. Looking back on it and looking at the genesis of sort of ideas when I was sort of making short films and producing a lot more narrative content than I was now, is that I found a lot of inspiration in that for characters, for situations that I'd write. It's almost as if I was observing the world like a documentary filmmaker, sort of watching life, watching people like they were nature passing me by. And in a way, they sort of are, I guess. When I lived in Sydney still, my flatmate and I would sit on our front porch and we'd essentially voice all the passers-by like characters. Not in a mean or derogatory way, but we would sort of create these imaginary situations and just putting voices to people and creating characters out of people that walk past. So that's what I've been trying to bring into my life and I guess my creative process just a little bit more recently. Now, I don't have a balcony or a porch with a street view and probably wouldn't stand outside in London voicing people. I'm not looking to get hit or stabbed or something. But for me, street photography has been a great excuse to watch and document the world. And there is something to be said for just sitting back and taking life in, watching life around you. You start to pick out really interesting characters. You start to sort of see life unfolding in front of you. And I think the process of actually watching that happen can be very sort of rejuvenating creatively. It can help inspire stories, it can help inspire ideas. I think just like the escaping to the forest that I covered in one of my previous videos, that sort of forest bathing, this sort of social, almost people bathing, that's a terrible name for it, but it sort of works at the same time. This sort of people bathing can be very powerful as a sort of a device to help you be more creative and sort of top up that creative well, if you like. Observing the unfiltered behaviors and interactions that you just don't get or maybe notice as much when you don't slow down enough to look for them if you're passing by, they can turn out to be a goldmine of inspiration and ideas. I've also found it fascinating going back to the same places in different seasons and seeing how people interact with the space at different times in the year. They behave and move and use the spaces differently too. Think in London, some of my favourite spots for this sort of thing are incredibly busy places like this. This is King's Cross Station, just because there's so much life, there's so much variety, there's so many interesting things happening all at once. And at any moment, you could see sort of a group of people dancing, you could see people sort of having reunions, you see people having sad goodbyes, and there's just these fascinating stories to be found and to be told in places like this. the weather opened up out there, so back indoors anyway. Well, the moral of the story right here is that if you're struggling with a creative problem that involves a situation with people, or a narrative progression that again involves human behavior, or even a location, then get outside into life, immerse yourself in it, and see what it gives you back. Because if you're anything like me, I can guarantee you it'll be pretty interesting. Time and time again, for me, this is inspired stories, ideas, the seeds of things that have grown into something bigger, and even just the locations for things that I've come back to again and again and again as well. You'll probably have picked up on some of the locations I use pretty regularly in this video, if you haven't already. And that's really interesting that this one for me started as a meditation on how interesting I find human behavior and how interesting I find the interactions between humans. But in the process of actually writing a video and shooting a video about that, one of the sort of ideas that I discovered, and one of the things that sort of kicked back off in my brain, was not just how important those interactions are, but also then the interactions with humans and their environment too. And I find that absolutely fascinating. I think both the interaction between human to human and then people and their environments can inspire such interesting situations and such interesting stories. And along those lines, it just so happens that I'm working on another video following an author during her journey writing a book. And we're going to be taking a look at how she makes real life locations come to life in fictional stories. And we've got a very exciting video coming very soon that involves a research trip to Italy, diving into how an author constructs a world of their own in a real world and how they place their own characters into that as well. So I can't wait to share that with you really soon, or perhaps on screen now if you're in the future and that has already been released. So I hope you enjoyed that. I haven't even seen it yet. But please do make sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll know as soon as that comes out. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed this video. And of course, in the comments, I would love to know where and how you find inspiration. It's a discussion I'm really interested in having because I think artists can learn from each other and get such great insights from each other. So until next time, take care of yourselves. And if you do feel that creative itch, do make sure you scratch it. And if it's not a creative itch, go and see a doctor. And yeah. I'm gonna leave it there. That was a weird train of thought. Bye. I hope you enjoyed the video and you got something out of it, and you know what I'm gonna ask you to do. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and join me on this creative journey. It's going to be amazing, and I can't wait to share it with you, with tips and tricks and creative processes and all sorts of fun stuff. But look, I hope to have you watching next time. Take care and stay creative.